This week we have 3 posts because one of them is really short. The first post is not one of the shorter ones, but it's still short-ish. My strange beliefs. Wherein Eliezer confesses that he has some strange beliefs. He says that no matter what I use as an example of socially weird but true, some people are going to disagree with it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an example. And weird but true is certainly an important topic in rationality. Otherwise, there would be a knockdown argument against ever dissenting. I guess, seeing as we just talked about the weird but true idea that the world as we know it may change in the coming decades, this is rather appropriate.
It is. It's also funny because this post is written in response to like an angry commenter that I feel like, there's obviously points he wanted to make anyway, but like, don't indulge people who come to your website and be like, you shouldn't talk about this. And it's like, you shouldn't come to my house and listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, always my attitude about ones presenting themselves online. And it's like, someone comes along to your Twitter handle and is like, I don't like this picture. And it's like, then don't follow me on Twitter.
Don't look at it.
I'm not on Twitter, but my understanding is you have to go to someone's thing to see what they're posting, right?
No, not necessarily. The algorithm will randomly put things in your Twitter feed.
Not randomly. Oh no,
based on what other people that you follow like or who they follow,
and based on what they think will keep you on screen longer, which might actually be outrage porn.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So
Twitter, like, they'll even pull in things that are trending that nobody has interacted with at all, but they're like, I think this person would be engaged by seeing this tweet, so they'll put it in your feed.
So in that case, your motivation is don't feed the beast, and just if something's put before you that you don't want to see, well, that's Twitter too. This is a blog. Yeah. You have to knock at this door to be let in.
Dude, Twitter. I've been using it a bit in the previous months, and every now and then I see someone ask something like, what's the most underrated sci-fi movie or something, right? And for a second, I want to click on it and reply, and then I'm like, there's dozens of replies already, hundreds really soon. My opinion literally doesn't matter. The person isn't going to read it. If I were to ask that question and I had tens of thousands of followers, I wouldn't read any of the answers either. I don't have that kind of time. I don't have that kind of attention. I don't care. It's just a way to drive engagement. And I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not engaging with you.
Smart. Yeah. I mean, and that's not even like outrage, attractant. This is just, in fact, it's appealing to you on a whole other level. Sci-fi stuff, boy, do I have opinions. And
that's right.
Like, hold on a second. I see what you're doing here, robots.
Yeah. You don't actually care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this because we do discuss a lot of socially weird things. And I don't know, like, what do you think your parents' reaction would be if they heard this episode where we just talked about the world ending?
I have no idea. I don't think I think because my take was so blasé that they, if I was sitting here saying, look, hunker down, buy a gun, stockpile food and ammo, like,
although everyone should buy a gun
and stockpile food and ammo.
That's true, actually. Yes,
but
always make sure you have at least 1 week's worth of calories in your basement.
I don't know. I think that they wouldn't be all that surprised, and I'm finding that my beliefs aren't that strange even to like people that aren't in our immediate circle of nerds. Like, I was at dinner at my wife's friend's house a couple weeks ago, and I don't know how it came up, but somehow post whatever, like, what do you plan to do with your body after you die came up. And I explained what I plan to do with my body, and they thought it was interesting.
Oh, cool.
And they were polite and engaged and, asking follow-up questions. And so, it wasn't like, well, that's weird, you weirdo. So, I don't know. I guess I would count on. Do I have any weird beliefs that you think that like most people would be like, that's fucking weird? Because in my head, I don't have a bucket labeled strange beliefs.
Yes, you believe that the world may end. The world as we know it may end soon.
But I don't act like I believe that. That's the thing, right? So like, on paper I believe that, but I'm saying go forth and go to the movies and you
plan to be frozen after you die because you might get resurrected in the future.
Yeah.
This, even though I think this is uncontroversially true, there are a lot of people who simply don't believe a non-human thing could ever have human intelligence, like a machine or something. Like, no, there's no way it'll always just be a machine. And so that is technically a weird belief.
And I guess even endorsing veganism, even if I'm not walking the walk, is a weird belief to say they're actually right. You guys are wrong. I'm wrong.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I am being forced to take more steps in the right direction, though.
Oh, yeah?
With the lactose intolerance.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
I mean, no, it's actually good. I've been wanting an excuse to do this for years. I tried switching to milk alternatives a few years ago, and they all sucked. I think they're better now than they used to be. Oat milk wasn't a thing 10 years ago, really. I
Yeah,
don't
oat
think.
milk is amazing.
And so, like,
You know, there's a virus, I think it's a virus, you can get that'll make you allergic to meat.
that's interesting. I don't know if I want to go that far,
Okay.
you know, but, you know, we'll see. I need to work out like an actual healthy diet first. But anyway, like dairy is just a nightmare factory. You know, like it is possible to raise and kill humane meat, but like in order to get milk from a cow, you have to take away its baby. Like it has to have it has to be lactating,
Yeah.
and it can't be wasting food feeding the baby.
Right.
And so like the baby misses its mom, and the mom wants its baby. They're both super sad, so you could have milk with your cereal.
Yeah.
And you know, you could take a slight util hit by having oat milk instead, and it's actually comparable.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, and I say that as somebody who just got on this bandwagon like in the last few weeks. So,
Cool.
but I don't know why I brought all that up. Oh, weird beliefs. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think polyamory is probably a weird belief, but it's
Yeah,
not, it's
yeah.
also it's a belief / lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like I believe in polyamory.
Right.
It's just it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who. I mean, I guess there are people who'll be like, you shouldn't do that with your genitals in your bedroom, but like those people are always safe to ignore, right? So I don't think anyone should. I don't think anyone can be against it. Maybe they think it's bad for the children.
Right. Well,
And
they
so-
can think it's bad for society in general.
Yeah, I guess, but it's not clear what that could mean.
They have arguments.
They always have arguments, but they have anything worth listening to? I'm not sure. I mean, you obviously don't. Maybe worth listening to. Do you think there's a Steelman case against it? No, this is a bit far afield, but like it makes people emotionally unhappy, and that reflects badly. Like that reflects into society. Kids need a nuclear family.
I could make a steel man against it. Yes. Again, I don't buy it because I am polyamorous, but I could see a non-terrible case made for it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Which would take like a lot more time. Do you want me to try right now?
I mean, not if you feel like you couldn't do it justice. We can save it, or you can if you're. I mean, whatever you feel like doing.
That it's one of those things that people think will make them happier, but actually doesn't. Much like, I don't know, using drugs or eating sugary, fatty foods. And it leads to mental health issues, depression, loss of meaning, and society as a whole suffers as well as the individual. Some individuals might flourish, but it still has greater knock-on effects on society with a loss of trust and a loss of energies which are redirected into getting laid rather than into doing more productive stuff. I mean, I'm just shotgunning things right here, but these are all things that I have heard argued and that could reasonably be argued somewhat. Like, mental health conditions are much greater, or seem to be not much greater, but noticeably greater among liberal people rather than conservative people. And is that causal one way or the other, or just a correlation? I don't know, but you could
Maybe they just talk about it more.
or maybe they talk about it more. But you could conceivably make a case for it that this is a trap that humans fall into, where they think it's something that they want, but it turns out that they are in fact not happy this way, and most of them will eventually turn into some flavor of, disaffected nihilist who seeks pleasure but is unfulfilled in life.
I can see that case being made, but not convincingly.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that was fun. So, I mean, we got strange beliefs. What's funny, though, is, like I said, just the format of this post is him responding to somebody who disagreed with him online. And I guess then he's taking this opportunity to talk back to everybody who's done that.
Yeah.
And everybody who will.
Yeah.
The next time someone gives him shit, he can just link to this, or someone else can do it in the comments.
Yeah.
Just because I called this blog Overcoming Bias doesn't mean that anytime any author says something you disagree with, you should comment, "OMG, how biased! I'm so disappointed in you. I thought you'd do better." Part of the art of rationality is having extended discussions with people you disagree with. "OMG, you are biased" does not present much basis for continuing discussion.
Yeah. I love that he points out that part of rationality is having extended discussions with people. And also, I don't know, did you get this a lot when you talked with people outside of the rational sphere about rationalism, and they were like, well, that's not rational? And I'm like, dude, rationalism doesn't say, this or that is the correct answer. It's a toolbox for how to think about things. So you can't just say that a certain position is not rational. You could say that maybe you could say it wasn't arrived at using these tools correctly or something, and then we could discuss that. But I don't know, believing in cryonics isn't rational.
That's the example I was going to bring up, because I've met that from people inside and outside the community, and I think I've met more of like the "you're wrong, your framework is wrong" with like the skeptic movement more than I did with the rationalist movement. But I think it's more involved in online arguments back then too. But yeah, cryonics, for someone to say that's not rational, they need to explain the case of like, okay, well, what would make it rational then? Like, and some of it does kind of come out like the math of like buying a lottery ticket, right? But it's a lottery ticket that is fairly cheap in the grand scheme of things and has a giant payoff, which also is a dollar lottery ticket, but the odds I think are better. It's not 1 in 300 million. It's 1 in 10, maybe. Generously. I'm not like the point is that number doesn't actually matter. It could be 1 in 1,000, or it could be 9 in 10, and I'm still on board. Right?
I was about to say there's a level where I wouldn't be on board, but at the level that I'm estimating it, I am on board.
Right. Like when I was explaining this to my psychiatrist, actually, or psychologist, when my shrink. When we first got connected last year, and because I was like, all right, hey, I got some like death-related stuff I want to talk about. That's why I'm here at therapy. Here's my thoughts on death already, so you know where I'm coming from, and that did take some getting, crossing that inferential distance, and part of it was like, yes, it might seem far-fetched because I haven't gone into like a long list of it, and I'm not a scientist. I can't explain to you why I think this stuff is likely other than people say it is. But it's less unlikely than if I were to say, hey, look, if I speak these Latin words, I can put your soul into this gem, and then in 1,000 years it'll come out, and you can do whatever you want. Like, I can't prove to you that, you can't prove to me that won't work. But you can be so sure that you'd never give me $1 for that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the difference of what I'm saying. Is like this is a lot more likely than like the phylactery, soul embodiment thing. Yeah. And that's
there are laws of physics that, as we know them, prevent the phylactery from working, but there aren't any that prevent the brain freezing from working.
That's the way that I'm like, yeah, this doesn't violate any known laws of physics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this one. It was funny. And it kind of a good shut up to everybody.
I liked the thing he said near the end. If you think that rationality means people will agree with you on their first try, so that anyone who doesn't do this can be dismissed out of hand as a poser, you have an exaggerated idea of how obvious your beliefs are.
That was the first time I've seen poser spelled. I didn't know there's a U in it.
Maybe that's the English spelling of poser.
And the rest of it is the American spelling of a sentence?
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, hammering that point that rationality is tools for how to figure something out, which, if you're involving other people in it, will probably involve discussion, rather than just, here is the rational formula, now you must believe me.
Well, and also, if you think rationality means that people won't disagree with you, then
you're objectively wrong.
Well, you're objectively wrong, but also, it's like, what would that even look like? We say we're rational and we all agree on everything. And presumably, if you're shitting on rationality, you're not one of people who thinks you've drank the Kool-Aid, and so you're not inclined to agree with them anyway. It just seems like a weird point for someone to make. Like, why aren't you guys all agreeing on stuff? Or why don't you agree with me on everything? It's like, well, because we disagree on stuff.
Yeah.
We have factually different pieces of evidence or different priors or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's all I had for that one.
Next post is the really short one, posting on politics. The one thing I pulled out of this is his disclaimer saying, hey, yeah, I don't like to talk about politics much, but I'm going to talk about politics for 3 posts. Just, bear with me, and then we'll get back to other stuff. And the main thing I pulled out of it was he says, if I say something that you disagree with, remember that my attempts at rationality are not sourced from a divine scripture, and hence are not a package deal. Meaning you can disagree with him about anything or everything. It doesn't mean that you're not rational or that his rationality is wrong or he's not rational. It just means, you disagree about something. He might be wrong about something. You can still use rationality for things.
Yeah. I want to see... Well, I guess it must have been around from 2007. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. When he says this isn't part of a package deal, he links to a Wikipedia page on the package deal fallacy.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I don't think I'd heard that before. I'm aware of it, and it makes sense. We've talked about this in roundabout ways with, it seems weird that if someone tells me their stance on legalization of mushrooms, I can guess their stance on drugs and immigration and...
Global warming,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not they've been vaccinated.
Yeah. You're right, yeah.
And so, those things should not be part of a package deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people who might say, they're moderists or centrists or free thinkers, they're not.
Yeah.
Right?
But with the majority of the population.
But we have a fun kind of epicycle of people that we know that like are super pro drug and pro private gun ownership and concealed carry, and it's like those are two things that do not go in the same package, and I like that. Anyway, package deal fallacy. That's cool. All right. Two-Party Swindle.
Yes. He starts out talking about the Robber's Cave experiment, where he says, how do you start an intergroup conflict? Well, the first step was to divide 22 boys into 2 groups of 11, and that was quite sufficient. And I just wanted to pull it out because that was one of those things that I believe failed to replicate, or I'm like, you couldn't replicate it nowadays because it would be too immoral to ever do such a thing to humans.
And too hard. And I think it wasn't just replication. Not to cut you off, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It was like not that good of science practice.
Exactly.
And like you're generalizing to all of humanity from 22 upper middle class white kids from like Ohio or whatever. Yeah. Like it's
like even from the beginning it wasn't that great, but also they didn't even, they cheated. They actively tried to instigate conflict. They pinned things on the other team that they didn't actually do at the beginning. And also, they had to try this twice. The first group of 22 boys that they got together didn't start fighting despite all their best efforts, so they scrapped that one and started over. So, you know, I dislike the Robber's Cave experiment, even though I think mostly what it points to, that you can get 2 groups of people fighting rather easily, is true. But you have to do more than just divide them into 2 groups sometimes.
Well, yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that's hard to do experimentally, but like comes from the department of psychology, like from that drawer in the psychology department that is labeled like things everyone already knows to be true. Yeah. Right? It's like, oh, look, people fight if you separate them into groups and point them at the other group. Yeah. And it's like, yes, we as a data for this, I point you to all of human history. Yeah. Like that. So, you know, you don't really need to show this in an experiment. You know, like. And I get why this was done. This was, you know, in that same. I read this is like one of the few bits of like research in psychology that I did like independently for fun when I was getting my degree. I read a book that was like fun, like the psychology experiments of the 1900s, and it was all like the cool, crazy shit people did. A lot of them covered in LessWrong posts. Yeah. And then I read another one where a woman tried to recreate as many as she could. Like a psychologist went to. Well, I could go into details, but it'd take too long. But some of the famous ones, like that one could try to replicate on their own. She went and did and got mixed results, but some of them were kind of startling. Okay. But anyway...
Do you remember one of the startling ones?
Yeah, there was like that one where I think someone was trying to prove that psychology, or what do you call them, psychiatric hospitals were like way too prone to diagnose people as crazy. And so they sent some people that would say, I'm hearing the word thunk in my head. And that's their only symptom. Otherwise, they're fine. They talk about how they go to work and whatever. And they were, I think, like 11 out of 12 of them were given a diagnosis of bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or something. And the 12th one got the other diagnosis. Okay. Like they were all diagnosed with something. Okay. And then as an aside for that one, apparently some other psychiatric hospital was like, this is bullshit. There's no way you ever did this. So I'll send some Confederates your way. And let me know if you spot them. And that hospital apparently turned away some number of people in the following year. The guy actually sent no Confederates. And so, anyway, so this woman went in, repeated the thing about thunk, and got some more skepticism than, like, I think the original story relays, but was still given a diagnosis and a prescription, which, like, you know, maybe the thought is, like, you walked into a psychiatrist, like, even if, like, I'm the psychiatrist, I think you're full of shit. Like, you walked in here making up weird stuff, like, there must be something wrong, right? Okay. Maybe that was what they were aiming for, but the fact that they just gave her medication and sent her on her way is kind of surprising.
I wish more places would just give you medication if you asked.
Well, that's the thing. She didn't ask for medication. Okay. She didn't ask him for help.
Okay, I see.
And so, you know, like... That's the easiest way to help.
I don't know what you're supposed to do if someone lies to you about their symptoms, though. Like, if I go into the doctor and I'm like, yeah, my left arm is going numb, I kind of feel this pressure on my chest, and it's hard to breathe, and I give him all the symptoms of a heart attack, like, I would expect him to give me some blood thinner or whatever they give you, and it's not his fault that I was lying to him, right?
No, but if you gave him such a weird presentation of it.
Okay.
You know, it's like, yeah, every day from 3 to 3:30, the fingers on my left hand tingle. Without fail, 3 to 3:30, then it stops. Yeah. Like, that'd be so weird. I wouldn't think heart attack. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that was just that got me a bit aside there. Sorry. So we're talking about Robber's Cave.
Oh,
This-
yeah.
this was
You know
the
a great
Two-Party
reason to
Swindle.
do that experiment? Because you get to go fucking camping for 2 weeks and play pranks on kids. What other reason do you need?
That's really like why they got like school funding to do this. Was like they thought it'd be funny like to throw eggs at kids when they weren't looking.
Yeah. No, it was them. It was the other kids.
We all saw you do it. Fuck. Start from scratch. These kids are all going home.
Get us some dumber kids. But to your point, you can just look at all of history, because Eliezer also quotes the Romans during the, well, for all of Roman history, basically, the populace was divided into the warring blue and green factions. There was violence in the streets, brother would turn on brother, etc. The support of a faction became necessary eventually for any candidate for civil or ecclesiastical honors. Who were these blues and greens? They were sports fans, the partisans of the blue and green chariot racing teams. So, you know, that makes sense.
Just watch like the fights among at the sports bar after the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Like some of that I think is just done in like full like not fully self-aware because then it can't be like indulgent fun, but partially self-aware. Like I know you're not really mad at me, but we're gonna have fun fighting over this, right?
I think some of this is just young men wanting to go out and get in a fight. And they're like, let's fight. And someone else is like, yeah, let's fight. And then they fight. Why? You're on a different team. Good enough for me.
Yeah. Sometimes all you just need is a thumbs up. I don't know if you ever did that when you were a hormonal teenager. Just you and your friends would just fight because you guys needed to vent somehow.
No. Before I was a teenager, like as 7, 8, like once or twice we put on some boxing gloves that we found in this kid's dad's basement, and we kind of duked it out for a little bit, but not once I got into my teenageness. No.
I think once the hormones are raging, that's like we would basically like anything goes. Don't go for the junk or the face.
Okay.
And so like your goal isn't to like mar the other person, but it's just to vent.
Okay.
It was I think probably a good outlet for it.
Maybe I would have been more psychologically healthy in my youth if I had done that during my teen years.
It's hard to say.
Because, that it finds expression in other ways.
Maybe I'm worse off. It's who knows.
You certainly seem mentally healthier than I am.
I think it's really easy to look like that from the outside.
Okay.
With the outward presentation.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, which one of us is the one that's going to a professional therapist, right?
Me?
Right.
Yeah.
So that must mean that you're less healthy because I don't have to go to a professional therapist?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
I think you're right.
That's what I'm going with. But yeah, he brings it back to what we were just saying. Professional football players from favorite team have a lot more in common with the professional football players from rival team than either has in common with the truck driver screaming cheers at the top of his lungs. Which, yeah, I mean, you basically always see the athletes going out and hanging out with each other, right? Or did they try to keep that under wraps? Like, we all know that they know each other and sometimes they hang out at parties, right?
Athletes?
Yeah.
From opposite teams, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume so.
Right.
I've
Like, they even change teams sometimes.
yeah. And so what a weird thing to like be this. This is just like one of the fun quirks of being into sports, of like feeling betrayed when like somebody wants to take a $10 million pay increase to go work for somebody else.
Yeah.
How could you go play for them? And it's like, do you see how many zeros are on this check?
Right. I'm just going to be playing with some other friends that I don't know as well as these friends, but whatever. The hardest part is probably moving to a different state.
But I feel like the zeros would make that so much, take a lot of the pain out of that.
Yeah.
But I think I've never followed like athletes in their real lives, but I suspect that they have to be aware like we play a game and we don't actually hate the other people, right?
I would assume so, yes.
Yeah. Maybe there's the occasional asshole that they don't like or whatever, but
Yeah.
most of what I know from sports comes from sports TV shows and movies.
Okay.
And in like in Ted Lasso, they don't really hate the other players. They hate
Except
the
for
one.
fucking Jamie Tart.
Yeah. They hate the one guy.
Yeah.
But because he's personally an asshole, not
Yes,
because he plays soccer
exactly.
against them, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so they definitely have a lot more in common with them than with each other than their fans. Group identification is pretty much the service provided by football players. And since that service can be provided to many people simultaneously, salaries are naturally competitive. I like that fact. I've thought about that myself a few times, that maybe I first picked it up from here, that that is their goal. They give tribal affiliations to people in a vast nation, and that's, I guess, the thing that a lot of people still need. Heck, I'm sure we still need it. We have the tribal affiliation of rationalist, right?
Yeah.
So
This actually came up in the same dinner conversation where we talked about cryonics and stuff, but my own personal identity is pretty small with stuff. Like, some people put, like, all these things on, like, it was you and I talking about this, maybe used this framing where it was like, if you had, like, a picture of yourself in your head, like, what would you put in the picture and then what would you put, like, on the whatever label underneath it? And some people have like a lot of tags. They'd put like, vegan, liberal, gun owner, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what I'd put there.
Yeah.
And like, so nothing to me is like, or like their sexual identity, right? That's like another big part of people's identity. I don't know what I'd put on mine. Right. I feel like I should have something, but when I look in, there's nothing there. So
I'm sure there's some things.
But maybe that's good, because then that way I don't feel like I need to get in a turf war with everybody over, I wouldn't put Packers fans, so I'd hate all the Broncos fans, right?
Right.
Yeah. If there's nothing I care about, then there's nothing I care enough to fight about.
Well,
it's a solid advice right there.
Fair enough. Sounds very much like Finn advice. Can't
like
get hurt if there's nothing you care about.
Homer Simpson, trying is the first step towards failure.
Was that a Homer quote?
It was at least said on The Simpsons. Maybe he didn't coin it, but yeah.
Cool. So anyways, getting back to the two-party swindle, is there a political divide of policies and interests between professional politicians on the one hand and voters on the other? Actually, I want to actually think about that.
Like, do the politicians themselves have different interests than us?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that they want, like, they need to be appealing to more people than we do, right?
Sure. But I mean more in the, like, does AOC have more in common with Ted Cruz than she does with the typical AOC voter?
They're both extremes, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe the analogy would be, like, easier with two more middle-of-the-road people.
I like the extremes one. I'd like to think about, do they actually have more in common with each other than the average voter for either one of them? Because I think maybe they do. They're both wealthy, upper class, have a ton of power. They have to play a popularity game for the people that are cheering for them at home.
And they're both kind of constrained by the fact that, like, if public opinion swayed, they would sway with it to stay with the public rather than stick to whatever their convictions were, which is often a good thing. Progress moves, but, like, if it moved in a way you didn't like, you're like, well, I still need the votes.
Yeah.
And that's a game that they have to play that we don't.
They both got to work in the same building. That's a huge one. If someone bombs that building, they are both affected. They're both in the public eye, often come up in the news.
Yeah, social media followings and stuff.
I'm just thinking, like, if either one of them had to relate to another human personally, they'd probably relate more to each other despite their political differences than to a random person out of their voting pool.
I don't know.
No?
Just because I think that their political differences come to such a head in, like, terms of emotional, like, vitriolic dislike, So it's like, if they're both stressed about something, are they going to go talk to each other? Or are they going to go talk to their fans? Like, I think that they would find more, like, sympathy with, like, people, who share their struggles and their concerns than, like, they would with each other.
Well, that's the thing. They literally would never talk to their fans because their fans aren't in, Washington, D.C. in the Congress building, whereas they might talk to each other if they, both went to get a pop at the same time. Like, hey, how's the kids? Good. Okay, cool, yours. I mean,
that's how I like to imagine it goes. I think that they actually, you saw Veep, right?
Yeah.
I think it's more like that, where, like, they are childish and stupid.
Yeah.
But I'm told.
But even those childish, stupid people have more in common with each other.
They have more in common, but they wouldn't share pleasantries at the soda machine.
They still usually pretended to share pleasantries.
I think that I've heard that's how the Supreme Court justices work.
Yeah.
Is that they disagree obviously on stuff, but they're perfectly amicable to each other, and that's how I think I'd like it. It's like, sure, we disagree, but, like, this is our job. Yeah. And then again, if you really thought somebody was doing something really, really terrible, people on one hand, the abortion debate really think that people are killing babies, and then, the same way as grabbing a newborn out of someone's arms and smashing it on the ground. Like, if you thought somebody was really doing that, you couldn't share pleasantries with them. You couldn't invite them over to your lunch table. Like, so, and that shouldn't be, that is a political argument, but that's more of like a scientific, or that's more of like a reality disagreement.
Yeah.
But it's tied up in politics stuff. I don't know.
I think they overplay their dislike for each other. Maybe.
I think they might.
That's not true.
But wouldn't that be fun, though? Is, like, once the cameras are off, they, like, high five and, leave.
Probably don't high five.
No, but I'm trying to think of, like, some of it seems like it is like reality TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's reality TV you're on all the time, because anyone around you could be videotaping you. And so maybe you do just play it up all the time, but you don't really hate them that much.
I mean, you could legitimately hate how hard they make your job and how they're dragging the country in a way you don't like, but I think that's different from, like, a personal dislike. And they'd still have more in common with each other as people. just because of their life situations, right?
Have you ever worked with somebody that you hated or that you really, really disagreed with? And then you think about that versus like the person you sat next to on the train to go to work. You might agree with them more than the person that you work with, even though you have the same job.
I mean, my sister comes to mind, even though I didn't work with her.
That's a good example for me too, actually. You'd think that we'd be super related or relatable. Well, we are super related. We're siblings, but we don't relate to each other at all. And we have a lot in common. Same parents and everything.
Right, right.
But yeah, I don't know. So I think I bring that up because I think there is a threshold where you start identifying more with a random muggle that you just reach out the window and grab than the person that you are been standing next to for 20 years.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's. I mean, this was certainly much more the case in 2007, where history had still ended and the parties were much more similar than now, where the fighting is between Americans.
Yeah, if we had an outside enemy to rally against. Where's Dr. Manhattan when you need him?
Where's that AI with the red glowing eyes and its army of robots?
Man, you can imagine that wouldn't be like the worst. Well, it would be about the worst thing someone could do with an army of robots.
What's that?
Like just unite humanity against killing them.
Oh, that's probably one of the best things you could do with an army of robots. Is unite humanity against you.
You could build all the things humanity needs and give it to them for free.
Well,
instead.
okay, I mean, sure.
Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely down there on the list of things, but it's not the worst thing you could do with them.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. We live in a weird ape brains.
So, to Eliezer's point, he says, suppose that you happen to be socially liberal, fiscally conservative. Who would you vote for? Or simplified further, suppose that you're a voter who prefers a smaller, less expensive government. Should you vote Republican or Democratic? Or, lest I be accused of color favoritism, suppose that your voter preference is to get U.S. troops out of Iraq. Should you vote Democratic or Republican? And
you should vote. I'll be back. Ask me again in 15 years.
And I mean, I think that makes his point swimmingly because basically on every issue, neither party would do that. You couldn't vote for a smaller government. You couldn't vote for getting troops out of Iraq because those simply weren't on the option. You could either vote Democrat or Republican, and neither of them was going to give you that.
But ostensibly, they are on the they're implied options for both, right? Republicans are small government. Liberals are not war.
I mean, if you believe lies.
Right. But you're supposed to believe the lies. That's why you're voting.
But if you... Well, I think that's part of the two-party swindle that he's putting out here. Like, sure, if you believe lies, but if you actually look at the truth, that you don't have an option to vote for someone that wants to do those things.
See, I thought he was painting it as say you want both of these things, who do you vote for? Like, you're stuck.
No, if you want either one, you can't have them, because neither of the two options allows you to pick that.
Well, I guess so. He was saying above, if you're socially liberal and fiscally conservative.
That's true. Then you also have no one you can vote for.
Yeah. That's, I mean, the thing is, and I like the idea that this is more digging into the package fallacy, or the package deal fallacy, than, trying to argue in favor of voting third party. Because, I'm not an expert, and I don't pretend to be able to argue this to somebody who knows a lot and is very opinionated, but I'm pretty sure voting for a third party is basically a waste if you care about how things go in the immediate future. It's a great signal that hey, if we can get past double digits with only 20 more years of practice voting for a third party, then we can start getting people to take third party more seriously. I mean, still, if you only break double digits, you're only still breaking double. You're not breaking into the 30 percentages that you need to start actually swaying stuff, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's got to me, it is just a take the lesser of the two, the two options that you dislike and find the one that checks fewer boxes of I don't like this, right?
I mean, I don't know. Who would you vote for if you wanted there to be greater opportunities for the poor?
Liberals, because they're all about giving away money, right? I'm pretending like I don't know. But, I mean, the idea is that
my answer is no one because neither party gives a fuck.
I mean, maybe, one party does try to pass better food stamps bills and stuff, right?
I don't think the food stamp bills really help.
They help people
also,
who use
they
food
usually
stamps.
don't pass them.
They usually don't pass them because they get stopped by the other group that doesn't want them to pass.
The other group has other things. On net, I don't think either party is helping poor people at all. They're as much about fucking the poor people as helping them.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that might be how it's going. I don't know. I disagree because I've heard this line of argument. Everyone has, but well, they're basically the same, just in different directions. And I kind of disagree.
Okay.
They're similar in different directions, but like I'm gonna, my tribal colors are hardly that. It's just that like it happens to be that one side is like pro science and one side isn't. And I think that science is the thing that's going to keep us from eating each other in 20 years.
Which side do you think is the pro science side?
The blue tribe.
Okay.
I mean,
I think both of them are very anti-science.
I mean,
like the blue tribe has been telling us for a long time that the world is going to end within the next 10, 20 years because it's going to catch on fire due to global warming, right?
I mean, the fringes are always going to be wrong, right?
Does the blue tribe not idolize what's her name, Greta something Thunberg?
I think that they like her. I think that I'd like people who like her more than people who give her shit on Twitter, especially if you're the fucking president. But
the blue people I saw either praised her or would say nothing about how she's completely destroying her life due to these crazy delusions.
Oh, so I don't know anything about what she's... See, that's the cool thing about not being in the news, is I have no idea what anyone's up to. I heard the name. I remember she was around 5 years ago giving talks at like the UN or something about climate change sucks. Can you not fuck us, please? Was basically her argument.
Her argument was, we are literally all going to die in less than 10 years, and this is your fault. How dare you?
Oh, that's funny. I heard the Steel Man version of it, which is like, y'all are fucking us, and we're going to inherit your mess.
Right.
Which, that part's true. So I'll Steel Man her for her and say that that's so I like the case that agrees that like climate change is real, that evolutionary science is real, and like you can do things with genetic research that are real. Stem cells aren't sapient human beings that we need to be morally concerned about, so we can use them to treat burn victims and paraplegics and stuff. There's a whole litany of things, and don't get me wrong, there's a whole list of downsides. I just feel like the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah.
But the second that the other side switches what they care about to things that I like more, I'm going to switch. That's why like I'm registered independent.
Yeah.
But like
the more, I don't know, just the more they have, the more anti-science censorship I saw from the blue tribe, the more I was like, oh, okay, they don't actually care about science. They just like the things that support their soldiers. And the second the science doesn't support their soldiers anymore, they're happy to push it under the bus.
I think like if you ignore like the couple of hot button issues that they're probably like throwing under the bus because they want to get reelected.
I mean, if you ignore the places where they're wrong about stuff, then they're never wrong. But
like, so say
that's
if they're
true of any political party.
Say if they're wrong about like, I don't know, it's probably a political opinion about like whether or not what do you call it, puberty blockers.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's probably a political opinion that whether or not they have any negative side effects,
right,
is true or false.
Right.
Like, so I'm sure that some people on the pro puberty blocker side would be like, they're literally zero downsides.
Yes.
And so, but I
have heard those exact words.
But they're just wrong. Yes. I assume, and I know that having done no research because it's a drug.
Right.
Every drug has downsides. Every drug gives you headaches, and you shouldn't operate a vehicle while taking it. Right.
Right.
So, like at the very least, they're wrong as a matter of just like basically a priori, I guess. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I'm saying is like you weigh that wrong opinion that they might be on, and this is mostly hypothetical because I'm not actually informed.
Yeah.
But you weigh that wrong opinion that they're on about this one niche issue, and compare that to like, lying about, oh yeah, we're burning clean coal, not the bad kind.
I mean, if you're trying to convince me that Republicans are a lot worse, you don't have to, because I already agree with that, and especially since one of my biggest issues is abortion rights. I think that is just a huge thing, which is always going to get my vote in support of abortion rights. But I'm also not deluding myself. I don't. There is no party I can vote for that thinks that abortion should be an unrestricted right to everybody.
No, but why would you let the perfect be the enemy of the good there?
I mean,
like,
I don't.
There's one group that says we'll let you do it for 20 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And another group that says fuck you can't do it. You can't even go to another state and do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you're right there, but also, what if I was against the war in Iraq? I literally couldn't vote for a party that was against it unless I went third party.
Right. That's a good point. And I think that...
What if I was against bailing out banks and expanding the government another $3 trillion? Literally can't vote against that.
I think that maybe, and this is definitely probably true of my vote, even though I don't really talk about what I vote for, except for right now. For the most part, it's like signal and tribe affiliation, favorite sports team stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the time you don't get to pick what you want, and most of the time what you're picking you don't have like a heavy influence over.
Right.
But there is something about like if one side gets, and we can just paint it as like cartoonish characters of both sides. Actually, if we take the cartoonish characterizations of both sides, they both kind of suck, huh? I think one does suck more than the other.
I agree.
So I would take one dystopia over another kind of probably 10 times out of 10. But that's, again, taking the most extreme version.
Yeah. Alrighty. Wow. We got way off, but that was okay because that was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah. Eliezer does say, here's a part I disagree with him. There isn't a grand conspiracy to expand the government, but there is an incentive for each individual politician to send pork to campaign contributors to borrow today against tomorrow's income. And that creates a divide between the politicians and the voters as a class, for reasons that have nothing to do with colors and slogans. I mean, I agree with him that is happening a lot, but I don't think that creates a divide between politicians and voters, because voters love pork for themselves. I've never seen a voter... That's not true. I rarely see the voting public be against more money being doled out to them.
Yeah. Did anyone not cash their whatever COVID stimulus checks out of principle?
Right, yeah.
That's a real question.
Oh,
I mean, probably somebody, but like
yeah.
Some crazy people, right?
Right.
At the very least, you're like, this is wrong. I'm going to cash it and spend it in a way that needs to be spent. Or it's like, you guys are idiots, but it's free money.
I think a lot of this is due in part to the loss of trust in government. Like, if there was a time where you thought the government was working for the betterment of the entire society, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm willing to pay extra taxes that I don't see benefit for because it's benefiting the society, which benefits me, as well. But if you're like, the government is incompetent and just fucks everything up, then whenever the government is like, here's some money, you're like, give me some of that money. The only thing you're good for is taking money and then giving it back, so give me some of it. And why wouldn't you vote for more for you? Because it looks like just a giant redistribution scheme that benefits some people at your expense.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying. It's just funny because, like, I guess I'm not sure what is the divide he's saying that is created.
I think what he's thinking of is that the people as a whole want a better, more functional government, and the government just wants to
keep on
ship out
governmenting.
pork to so that they get benefits. And I don't think it's the case anymore that people want a better, more functional government and want to work for the greater good of society. Maybe I am just becoming jaded in my old age here. Maybe people really are better than that and still do have some faith in the system to make things better for everyone.
I don't know. I mean, both of those things can be true, right? people having faith and the system not being that way. So
I mean,
well, you
as
said
a majority.
You said people might have faith in it actually doing the thing, not actually doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you can have it both ways. You can say, actually, I just see past the lie. You guys are free to have your hope, though. But that might be old cynicism. Who knows?
Like, I think I mean as a majority, because once the majority of the people all lose faith in the government, then you just get expectation of corruption and incompetence.
I was wrong. Congress people make $174,000 a year.
Okay.
What's funny is that you want to guess what it was in 1786 or 1789?
I believe it was $0, right?
$6.
Oh, $6? Okay.
I guess this is when they started doing salaries.
Pittance.
Oh wait, in 2020 dollars though, that was $130.
That's still nothing.
That's still nothing. Yeah. That's pretty funny. Oh, this is disappointing and weird. In 2009, they made $174,000, which in today's money is $209,000.
Oh, so it's been going down.
Today they make $174,000, which today is worth $174,000.
Yeah.
It's not that they're making less; it's that money's worth less. That's the disappointing part.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, his grand point here is that the two-party swindle is basically the political teams are like sports teams, getting emotional over politics as though it were a sports game, identifying with one color and screaming cheers for them while heaping abuse on the other color's fans is a very good thing for the professional players team, not so much for team voters.
I can see that. Oh, and that might be so. Imagine if we stretch the sports analogy to where, like, the more the sports fans hated each other, like the more the more money they spent buying jerseys and tailgating and whatever tickets, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like you can imagine a weird perverse incentive where like the sports administration fosters discontent among the fans, right? to keep them hating each other so they buy more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I will just take the point that he makes there, which is like getting emotional over politics as though it were a sports game, screaming cheers for one team and heaping abuse on the other. He says it's a good thing for professional players' teams, not for the voters. I would just say like that's not a happy way to live. Like, and 99 times out of 100, you're not going to make the world a better place by heaping abuse on anybody. And like, there are people I know who are, and I'm not like vehemently. I don't think I might come off uncharitable to some people. Like, I don't think that there's even like the best case in favor of Donald Trump was very compelling, which is my nice way of saying that I think you're an idiot if you think he was a great president.
Yeah.
But like, I know people who liked him as a president. I love people who liked him as a president.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but there are people so it's like,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is like, at the end of the day, and you want to know how often that comes up like in our day-to-day lives, like how much those political differences make an impact. It's like zero.
Right.
And that's true of all of your political beliefs, basically.
Yeah.
Short of like, I don't know, not like if you were in an active shooter situation and you weren't allowed to bring your gun, or you were allowed to bring your gun,
Mm-hmm.
like that would be a thing where like your politics actually mattered. But frankly, that's not politics. That's just your own personal security choices. And I know it comes to, like it's argued in politics, but maybe because I don't know what politics is. Like everything I boil down to like, no, that's actually just like politics is things like distant immigration control, like border control, right?
I mean, it's that too, but it's also where are you allowed to take your gun?
Yeah, and there's probably reasonable restrictions on that, right? Maybe there's not. Some people might argue. I'm safe. I'm safest, and everyone else around me is safest wherever I have my gun.
Right. Right.
But you might just be able to say like, I don't know. It seems like inviting trouble if you say we're allowed to bring them into banks, because like then you're not breaking the law until you pull it out and point it at the clerk. But if we can stop you at the door with your gun, you can't come in and rob the bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like border control, stuff like that doesn't impact anybody directly. Like unless you work at the border, like unless it's your job to drive a Jeep back and forth and look for people. Like,
well, it changes who else is in the country.
But that almost never impacts anyone's day to day. Like,
it depends on how close you live to the border.
I suppose so.
It probably doesn't affect people in Minnesota, but it affects a lot of people like in Arizona and Texas.
I've heard tell that, people come in and take low-skill jobs or something because they can do it without paperwork and whatever. But, like, and I'm sure that happens. I guess I don't want to dismiss it, but, like, I guess I don't know anyone in those places, right? Or at least not personally that closely. But I do know people who care a lot about border control, and it's not impacting them. And maybe they care about it for the same reason that, like, I care about abortion rights, and I care about that as a guy in Colorado. No one, my abortion rights aren't affected because I never had any, and nobody I know's are affected because they're all in Colorado, where it's still the same as it was, a year ago.
Yeah.
And so maybe I guess I get being passionate about it for reasons that like it's beyond your personal scope. Maybe I'm thinking too narrowly.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess like I'm not happy with the abortion decision either, right?
Yeah.
But like I'm also not losing sleep over it.
Right.
But that might be because it's not impacting me. Maybe I just like don't have the emotional tuned in factor there.
I mean, I'm not losing sleep over it either because, like you say, we're in one of the safe states. Our rights haven't changed at all.
And you can't get anyone pregnant.
And that too, yes. But I mean, I know people who can get pregnant, so
yeah,
it could. I mean, it can't affect my life in Colorado, but if I knew people in other states, which technically I do, so
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. Then I'm wondering. I'm kind of just noodling on this because maybe I've taken my political apathy too far, and this is not the worst time to discuss that. But
I mean, I'm much more of a federalist nowadays, where I think different states should be allowed to have different laws and people move freely between them.
But like moving from one state to another is like it's not something that everyone can do,
right?
And so it sucks because like on the one hand I can see the case for that, and people talk about some people are like flippant and like, well, just get up and move. And it's like, what do you mean just? It's like, are you going to pay for like a moving truck for me to take 2 weeks off of work, for me to
find a new job,
find a new job, put a deposit on a place? Like, no, then fuck you. You can't tell me just to do anything.
Also, blue states tend to be very expensive to move into. Yeah,
and judgmental once you get here. For some reason, Coloradans are all about like native. I was born here. Fuck you, kind of. We have license plates that say Colorado native. Like.
I mean, I guess I've seen those. Yeah. Is that a big thing? I don't know
if it's a big thing, but it's a thing that people pretend to care about.
Okay.
if you go to like r/Denver, people are always shitting on people coming in from out of town, but that's also Reddit where people I think are being funny on purpose.
Okay.
But they're not being Denver circle jerk funny. They're being, like, oh, those out of towners, they'll suck at driving. And it's like, I don't know if they all suck at driving.
I mean, my solution is not to go to r/Denver.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, if you want to get your pulse on how people feel about Colorado natives or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of rambling at this point.
No,
I
it's
guess
cool.
I'm still, I don't know. Part of me wonders, like, so when the Roe decision came down, I was thinking about that. Like, am I only like not moved by this because of my lack of personal stakes in it? Mm-hmm. And that's no doubt part of it. Just because how could it not be? Mm-hmm. But then I was trying to think, like, what could possibly come down from the government that I would feel a reaction towards? Mm-hmm. Like, that's not rhetorical. I was trying to think of actual examples, and it's like I'm already signed up for non-voluntary service if we get drafted.
Okay.
So like, if they said, whatever, you're now going to be signed up for, you're now conscripted, and it's like, yeah, I already knew that was a possibility. That sucks, but like I'm already aware of that.
Right.
Like what else could come down government wise that would like anything that could freak you out in a way that women are very understandably freaked out about their lack of abortion access?
They could make various religions mandatory. They could implement religious laws. They could start wars with foreign governments, especially nuclear armed ones. There's a lot of things the government could do that would be terrible.
Maybe I just think that like
ruinous taxes on everybody.
I guess taxes would be harder to avoid, but like if it was like you have to go to this religion stuff, you could just fake it or lie.
I mean,
that'd be a lot like driving across the border to get, across the state border to get an abortion.
How do you fake wearing a burqa all the time if you're outside?
I mean, I don't think that could realistically pass. But you're right. That's not a bad example. I mean, so I don't know. I guess you dissent and go to jail. Yeah, I don't know. That's weird.
That's even worse than moving to another state, man.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of like how do I answer that question, and I imagine like not doing it. That's what would happen. So I was more admitting defeat.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Anyway, I'm sure probably sometime in the last 5 minutes this went from fun rambling to pointless rambling. So
I think basically I think the Post agrees with you. The Post is saying getting people emotionally involved in fighting in the red versus blue wars is really good for the red and blue politicians and is basically completely inconsequential to the voters themselves. So I think you were arguing the pro-Yudkowsky side, and this whole time, for some reason, I was like, but I'm part of the Two-Party Swindle. Don't take away my caring about politics. So
I don't know. There might be a balance between the two positions.
There might be also, if the world as we know it is going to end in 20 years, how much can really go wrong in that time? Maybe a lot. Maybe
that's a compelling point.
I don't know, man. Like, yeah.
I mentioned long-term animal rights activism. Mm-hmm. I just listened to an interview on the Lex Fridman podcast, which is like, imagine Joe Rogan, but if Joe Rogan were an AI researcher instead of, a meathead who can have engaging but kind of like uninformed arguments or discussions. Mm-hmm. Lex Fridman is like, he is an AI researcher version of that. It's a lot of fun.
Cool.
But he's friends with Rogan and he's chill as fuck. He talks with everyone that, he can get his hands on. He was talking with somebody whose name I can't remember, and I can't find the thing. I thought it was one of the more recent ones, but it must have been from before, and I'd had it like saved or something. Okay. So it was with somebody who works at an animal rights organization, and it was a great interview. But she talked about being motivated by like very very strongly motivated by her emotions, and like because she really cares about the animals that she's trying to help. And she says, I actually keep that in check with all of this like rationality and logic. And so like so I guess what I'm going to get is like that might be the way to do it. Like you actually do really care, but you don't let that get in the way of doing things most effectively.
Okay.
And so per that, if you're really invested in a political position or stance or outcome, like maybe keep those emotions in check, have them. It's perfectly appropriate and human, but like if you can kind of control yourself, then you're able to, what am I trying to say? Win more battles. Like, have you ever changed your mind on something?
Never.
I
was right from the day I was born.
But if you had, it might have been because somebody like talked to you calmly, approached, in a nice human way. You probably never changed your way, I'm willing to guess, because someone got in your face and yelled at you and called you a fucking moron.
Probably not. No, that was kind of one of those things that probably caused me to dig in my heels.
So that might be good advice, and that's maybe the happy balance between these, right?
Yeah.
Like, by all means, be driven. This is important. If you're not emotionally, maybe I'm broken because I'm not emotionally engaged by this stuff, and that's fine. But being emotionally engaged by it, but maybe do check it so that you can win more battles rather than just like win more arguments. You know?
I think my emotional engagement with it is why I've become so disgusted over the past 5 years with all of it.
I think that's understandable.
Well, anyways, we got really way into politics. Oh, hey, if you want politics, every 2 weeks, me and Wes and David tackle the rationalist view on the politics of the day, the news of the day, rather, some of which is political, on the Mind Killer podcast, which I will link right here.
Do check it out. It's fun. Yes. That is my main source of news. I don't know if Wes has been told that directly,